away, or the one thing I was watching out for, and many of us watching this race were watching out for, was what did Abigail Spanberger do about Jay Jones, or what did she say about Jay Jones? She did not give a definitive answer as to whether she will continue to endorse him, whether she knew about those texts.
If you're Jay Jones, you couldn't feel good because your gubernatorial nominee said people ought to vote. I was reminded of, remember Ted Cruz in 2016, vote your conscience?
Yes.
So what Abigail Spanberger said to voters about Jay Jones was, do what you want to do. She neither rescinded nor reinforced her prior endorsement. Tried to throw him under like one half of the bus, I guess, is what she tried to do. The other big issue that has animated this campaign, one of the other big issues that's animated this campaign, was Spanberger's stance on transgender issues. And she, again, didn't quite have an answer for it. But here's what I noticed. In both of those cases, if you're Winsome Earle-Sears, what you want out of this debate, more than anything, is that soundbite. Mm-hmm. Is the moment where your opponent is floundering and foundering. And in every case, Winsome Earle-Sears interrupted.
Yes, absolutely.
She interrupted and interrupted and interrupted. And every time when you thought, and this was actually, it reminded me of Donald Trump in one of his debates with Joe Biden in 2020, where if Trump would have just let Biden go, it would have been worse, but he kept butting in. And Winsome Earle-Sears gave a sort of Trump-like performance. She was very aggressive, and she was in there. Question. Mm-hmm. Very few people in Virginia, very few people who are not political junkies. We love you, political junkies. Very few people who are not political junkies are going to watch this whole debate. They're going to look for the sound bites. But if somebody was watching this whole debate, what do you think they take away from this? What after an hour of these folks on stage, what's your takeaway?
I have to go back to the interruptions part.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, of course, there were a lot of non-answers from Abigail Spanberger, a lot of dodging from Abigail Spanberger. But throughout the debate, just as someone covering the debate, as a viewer, I could not hear Abigail Spanberger's answers sometimes because Winsome Earle-Sears kept on interrupting. I think there's a way to get a zinger in to really land it. I don't know if it was that.
The lieutenant governor also called her Abigail. Mm-hmm. And made a big point of calling her Abigail. And while Spanberger was careful to call her the lieutenant governor or Ms. Earle-Sears or whatever to use titles, the lieutenant governor kept calling her Abigail, Abigail, Abigail throughout. She seemed at times frustrated with the process. Certainly the moderators seemed frustrated by the derailment. Do you think that matters to voters, though? Do you think that for most of the people who will see this on your local Nexstar affiliate tomorrow morning when they're up making coffee, getting the kids ready for school, does Winsome Earle-Sears' demeanor make a difference for those voters?
I think style absolutely matters to voters, particularly to voters who might not have been engaged up until this point. I mean, if they're starting to tune in and really get their first look at Abigail Spanberger and Winsome Earle-Sears, if they see the interruptions, et cetera, you mentioned calling her Abigail, et cetera, I don't know if that necessarily, attracts them to her. I think there's a question of professionalism. I mean, both of these women have military or law enforcement backgrounds. It seems that Abigail Spanberger was, obviously, speaking of rank, very much showed that to Winsome Earle-Sears, but that did not seem to be reciprocated. We're
going to have some clips from this debate momentarily. We have them now. We have one. We have one. What? I don't know which one it is. So let's play the clip, and then we'll talk about it.
I learned of these text messages the day that they came out, and I denounced them as soon as I learned of them.
She denounces murder.
And importantly, at this point, as we move forward, the voters now have this information that was withheld for them,
you're running to
presumably for political reasons. But the voters now have the information, and it is up to voters to make an individual choice based on this information. We are all running our individual races. I believe my My opponent has said that about her lieutenant governor nominee.
Ms. Earle-Sears.
And it's up to every person to make their own decision.
So there you have it, the non-answer. So there's your non-answer from the Democratic candidate, where she is saying vote however you want to vote, and you've got Winsome Earle-Sears coming in that way. Can we call her WES? I don't know. I don't know whether we can give her. I don't know whether she can have an AOC like moniker, but it would be shorter. Question for Spanberger. Does this wash? Is that a good enough answer to basically say, I disapprove of it and you ought to vote for him if you want to vote for him, but I'm not taking the heat?
It's unsure. I mean, my first reaction to that was that it's the safe answer. I mean, I was chatting with a Democratic strategist earlier this week, and they essentially said, look, you don't want to break news at a debate. You want to play things very safe. And I think that's what you saw Abigail Spanberger do. Another Democrat I spoke to earlier this week said, if Jay Jones had, I think it was the strategist that said the audacity or the gall to run for this position, knowing these text messages were out there in the first place. What makes you think that if Abigail Spanberger calls on him to step down, that he would actually step down? I mean, imagine if Abigail Spanberger called on him to suspend his campaign and he didn't. I mean, that would just be a huge headache.
Right. She would try to flex. And if she failed, it would make her look impotent in that way. And then what if he won? And then what if he won anyway? And all that stuff. I understand the path of least resistance here. How much, though, did the Sears... There's an ad running in heavy rotation from Spanberger that takes a clip of Winsome Earle-Sears arguing with a Democratic crowd in Buena Vista, Virginia in 2024. Yeah. Have you seen this ad?
I think I know which one you're talking about.
She says, I am speaking.
Yes,
I am speaking.
Yes.
And the ad is taken out of context, as Republicans will point out, but it was her engaging with a hostile crowd.
Right.
At this event in Buena Vista. And the ad is very unflattering for Winsome Earle-Sears. And I thought, she's kind of playing to type a little bit tonight because
absolutely
she is this aggressive person. Now, for Sears, what she is arguing, and she argued tonight, is basically she's an immigrant, she's a woman, she is a black woman, and she has had to, and she's a Marine, and she has had to push hard in her life to get to the places that she wanted to go. How does a candidate balance being aggressive with being approachable and acceptable? I think she may have missed the mark on that tonight.
Yeah, and just to zoom out maybe a little bit, I think a lot of female candidates do grapple with this and how they balance that, being approachable, being warm and friendly, but also being assertive, being aggressive, standing firm, etc. Tonight, I don't know if she made the mark. I think she missed it definitely with the interruptions, and also just the first answer on the car tax, for example. It just seemed too obvious to bring up Jay Jones there.
We also, we have to take a break because we have something exciting waiting for you on the other side. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Norfolk State University, where we're wrapping up what was a very consequential and occasionally very testy gubernatorial debate here in Virginia, the one and only. Now, there is another one and only that we talked about earlier, and it is the only person that I am aware of in the 20th century, certainly, and I don't know how far back you would have to go. It's the only person to have won the Attorney Generalship of Virginia at the same time that his party lost the governorship. And it worked out pretty well for him because Bob McDonnell would go on to become the governor of this grand old dominion, and he joins us now. Governor, thank you for being here. We're very glad to see you down here in your home turf.
Thanks, Chris.
What's your assessment about what you saw tonight?
Well, it was a very spirited debate, very lively, fast-moving. I really thought the moderators did a very good job. One, they picked real issues that affect the state. And secondly, they followed up well. If the candidates didn't answer the question, they put them to the test on both sides. I thought they played it fair. There was a little bit too much talking over each other for my liking, and so you couldn't hear the answers. But I do think that on some of the issues dealing with abortion and transgender and school choice and paying for the car tax, Abigail Spanberger said some things that sounded good but never answered the question, didn't give the substantive answers that were followed up on by the moderators, and so I think she kind of waffled on. Same thing she's been doing on right to work. I thought Winsome Earle-Sears was aggressive. There were questions she didn't answer as well if she felt uncomfortable giving a direct yes or no, but on balance, on some of the big ones, she was pretty direct yes and no. She was more aggressive, being a little behind in the polls than I've ever seen her in other debates. I mean, she's a lovely person, but she was clearly on the attack tonight, was part of the strategy.
As a courtroom practitioner, you know that when the witness is struggling, you let them struggle, right? You don't jump in and bail them out. On those moments tonight when Abigail Spanberger was struggling with those answers, as you said, on transgender, on Jay Jones, would it have been helpful, do you think, if Winsome Earle-Sears, if the lieutenant governor had just let her sink as opposed to jumping in and disrupting?
The moderators did such a good job following up. I'd have let her stumble on her own words and repeat the non-answers to show people it gave an answer. Like if you keep asking Jay Jones by the moderators over and over, will you countenance essentially a acquiescence to statements that would visit an assassination attempt on the Speaker of the House and then urinate on the grave and go after his kids? I mean, just horrific on their face. And to say, do you want that person to still be the Attorney General of Virginia and your lawyer when you're in office and representing you in the courts, Governor? Is that what you want? And of course, she had to have it both ways, saying, I condemn that, but no, let the voters decide. Well, that's not leadership. And sometimes you have to say hard things about people that aren't worthy for an office, and she wouldn't do it. And so on those, if I was Winsome, I would have just let her talk, because she was certainly twisting on the vine on that one with no real good answers.
Okay, and then I'm going to let my colleague ask you a question because hers are meaner than mine, but I want to ask you, in your gubernatorial victory, it rang a bell that was a harbinger for what was going to happen politically in 2010 in the United States, right? The moment that your party asked you to give the rebuttal to Barack Obama's State of the Union address, and Republicans sort of got their groove back in Virginia with your election. You won by, I don't remember, 18. But who was counting? But who was counting? Won by 18. So you really did it big in Virginia, and it was the start of something for Republicans. Democrats are hoping that that's what's going to happen in Virginia this year, right? So they're hoping that Virginia is the start of getting their groove back. How much credence do you give to the idea of Virginia as a bellwether and Virginia telling us what's going to happen next?
Well, I think it's clear because we have, along with New Jersey, the off-year elections. And it's also a referendum on the presidency. Virginia has this remarkable trend for 50 years in a row, except for 2013. The party in power in the White House loses the governor's race. So, advantage Spanberger, just like with Obama in the White House, it was advantage to me in winning by 18. This is clearly not an 18-point state, but that was a unique time in history. But to your point, Chris, next year is going to be the midterm elections, usually a referendum on the president. So if you go into that and you've won Virginia and New Jersey governorships, the two biggest races in the country, I think it clearly does give the donor class incentive, gives the grassroots group incentives that they've won a couple big ones and they can do well in the midterms. But federal issues are clearly different than the state issues. In Virginia, though, the governor's debate, they always get conflated. What's happening in Washington, you heard Spanberger on Trump, on tariffs, on trade, on borders, all these things that maybe the president's popularity isn't as strong on. She was trying to make hay out of it because she knows that's going to play well this year, but also next year.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier the possibility of a split ticket. You obviously know a lot about that. Abigail Spanberger's leading Winsome Earle-Sears in our latest polling by 10 points. I think the average is 7 or so. Right. The Attorney General race has always been a lot more narrow, but it could get more narrow now that these texts are out. What is the possibility we'll see a split ticket?
In a normal election cycle, Julianne, I think it would be very rare because we're so painfully divided in this country along party lines. If you deviate from party orthodoxy, the base takes you out. The donor class, Bloomberg or Soros take you out. We've seen that in Virginia. And so normally it's straight party line. The last three elections or so, very little deviation, which is sad because it's less clear-thinking independents that can vote for a Republican and Democrat because they're voting the person and the policies and not the party. I think this time, though, with this sort of October surprise, like we had, last year with Governor, or last cycle with Governor Youngkin on the parents' rights issue in Loudoun, that propelled all three of the candidates to victory from 4 down to 2 up at the final minute. This one is unique, though, I think, in a way, to the Attorney General's office. When you're the top law enforcement officer and right before the election, it's discovered that you just pled guilty to a reckless driving crime.
Oh yeah, that happened, and it got overtaken. I forgot even about that. That's right.
Yeah.
Because it's countenancing in this day and age, after Charlie Kirk, the attacks on President Trump, the Minnesota Democratic lawmakers. It's across the ideological spectrum. When you say things that embolden sort of the nuts in both parties, to say that it's okay to use violence in order to achieve political goals. You've really lessened the greatness of the United States of America, and both parties and people across the board should condemn it. But if you want to be the top cop of Virginia, and you can't affirmatively, say that person is not qualified to be Attorney General, I think it's a poll across the board on the Democratic ticket, but especially will cause, I think, a real decline in the votes for Jay Jones.
All right, I got to ask you one more, then we will turn you loose. You have a real life, I know. Virginia, if we were to talk about Virginia in 2009, 2010, 2011, you say this is a state, Obama won in 2008, but it's coming back, it's going to be Republican. Virginia has shifted to be a Democratic state, and it's a inelastically Democratic state. When we look around the country at the swing in 2024, nationally it was about 11 points. Virginia was not that much. Virginia remains 6.67 points Democratic on the presidential level. The argument that Virginia Democrats have made basically is the Northern Virginia suburbs plus Richmond plus the Tidewater means that Democrats have fundamental control of Virginia for the foreseeable future. Tell me why you think that's true or why you think that's not true.
Well, I don't think it's true because of this broader issue that's almost like a law of physics in Virginia, and that is whoever's in the White House will lose the governor's race. And again, one time in 50 years. So that swings both ways with both parties. And of course, you saw even with certainly a bluer state, no question, than when I ran. Glenn Youngkin leads a sweep of the statewide offices, and now one vote difference in each house of the General Assembly. I think this toxicity in the politics, the identity politics, where one side's got red on, one's got blue on, we're 100% right, you're wrong. There's only so long that Americans can take that because it's not the way real people think. I mean, businesses can't say, well, I'm only going to sell to Republicans and not, So in time, I think this hyper-partisanship has got to pass, and the rise of the independents will come back, and they'll determine, and there'll be more of this, the selection between maybe a Democrat governor and Republican attorney general as the top cop. So I think it's clearly been a trend. A lot of people, ironically, from New Jersey and New York are leaving those bad policies, coming to Virginia and bringing their bad voting habits and voting for the same things they left. I don't understand.
You can't blame New Jersey for everything. Governor, we are so grateful for your time, and thank you for your service.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay. We're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, who knows what surprises that the able producers down here are going to have for us. If they can get Bob McDonnell, who knows what's next? Is Thomas Jefferson in the wings? We'll find out. Welcome back to Norfolk, Virginia for the Hill special coverage of Virginia's one and only gubernatorial debate. I'm Chris Direwalt. This is Julia Manchester. It is happening, and they're striking the stage back there and moving on, but there is a little more meat on the bone. I want you all, and somebody's going to tell me if I'm asking for the impossible, I want you all to take a listen to the discussion that they had about transgender. Do we have that sound? I would love if we have that sound. I'm going to keep talking until we do not have that sound, so we're not going to have that. We're not going to talk about it. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's see. Let's play that. Let's play what we've got.
I will take all endorsements, including the president, and I am working very hard for the people of Virginia. I believe in lower taxes. The people want that. My opponent, unfortunately, she's already said she's going to raise taxes.
Now, the very capable moderators, of course, pointed out there in their question that Donald Trump has endorsed Jason Miyares, who is running for Attorney General, but he has not endorsed Winsome Earle-Sears, right?
Yeah, that's correct. He's praised her campaign, but he hasn't endorsed her. And the two of them have an interesting relationship. She actually, after the 2022 midterms and Republicans' underwhelming performance, basically came out and said, okay, it's time to go Donald Trump. Donald Trump hit back at her, called her a phony, the usual Trumpisms. So, there's that dynamic at play. But also, I covered the Virginia 2021 gubernatorial election, and I remember when Glenn Youngkin was trying to run as far away from Donald Trump as he could. So, this could be, I get.
So is it, there's one scenario, or there's one way of thinking about it in which it is a kindness to Winsome Earle-Sears for Donald Trump not to endorse her. Certainly if he came and campaigned for her, it would be a negative.
Absolutely.
So that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that she's not on the nice list. She's on the naughty list, so she doesn't get an endorsement. The Virginia Republicans have had their own beef. Mm-hmm. Also not discussed tonight is the lieutenant governor candidate for Virginia, who has been a controversial figure.
Reed, yes.
He had some interesting comments on online chats. He had a bunch of stuff. And for a period of time, it looked like Sears was not going to endorse him. They weren't going to run together. There was going to be all this stuff. And then she came around and did. But I don't think that rises to the same level of the J. Jones text, right?
I don't think it does. And then just also to add on to that Republican beef, I think there's a lot of Republicans in Virginia who are hoping that it was actually Jason Miyares who Glenn Youngkin would back to be the gubernatorial candidate. So, I mean, that's an added element to this. But in terms of the Trump endorsement, I mean, it's a double-edged sword maybe for Winsome Earle-Sears. It's interesting because his approval rating is underwater here in Virginia.
It's about the same as it is nationally.
Yeah.
It's 42%.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we have a little clip from, oh no, here we go. We don't need a clip.
There he is.
Who needs a clip? We've got here, come, Mr. Speaker, you got to come right here. You can't run away.
Okay, you had your other man over there.
I know.
I don't think the Republicans
because you were moving too fast. We couldn't stop. Okay. I want you all to meet the Speaker of the House.
Where am I looking? Who am I looking at? You?
Well, you can look at us.
Okay.
And then, or you can look over there when you say hello.
Hey.
But this is Don Scott. He's the Speaker of the House of Virginia. He is a Democrat. And how did your candidate do tonight?
I mean, Abigail, first of all, thank y'all for having me. Abigail Spanberger did a fantastic job. It was a master class on how you keep your composure when your opponent is doing everything in their power to distract you. I mean, we have never seen a debate that unhinged over and over. Y'all know it was unhinged.
I don't know.
We've
covered a lot of
debates. She was trying to out-Trump. I mean, that was like, my strategy is, how do I figure out how to get under your skin? How do I figure out how to interrupt you over and over again? I'm the Speaker of the House over the oldest continuous body in the Western Hemisphere. And the decorum that she showed tonight, it was beneath her office. It was embarrassing for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I hope that when they go back to the drawing board, because they're down and desperate, that they'll come up with a better strategy than they exercised tonight. Okay,
but what about Spanberger's answer? What about the former Congresswoman's answer on J. Jones?
Listen, this is a record-breaking night. two women running for the highest office in the land, the Commonwealth of Virginia. The first thing y'all want to do is switch to the two men. They get their time. They get their time. Look, they get their time next Thursday night at a debate at William and Mary. They'll be able to get all of that out. But I think she answered the question fairly. Listen, nobody should be. She basically said, "I'm accountable for my own words."
Right.
She was very clear on that, and she has vehemently. What's the word I want to use? But basically have denounced everything to Jay Jones. She has vehemently denounced anything that he has said. But she says she has to run her own race. Ironically, if you go back and look at the Facebook post that Winsome Sears made a ways back, listen, Governor Youngkin asked John Reed, the lieutenant governor, to get out of the race months ago. When Winsome Sears was confronted about it, saying that there was some shaky pictures out there with him. The governor told him to get out. For days they went through this drama. Winsome Sears made a Facebook post. They said, Winsome, what are you going to do? Should he get out the race? You know what she said? I got to run my own race. Now the hypocrisy kicks in. And now everybody's like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Abigail said, I'm responsible for my own race, and that's what she's doing.
Okay, last thing. On the issue of trans women in sports. This is one that Democrats nationally, we've seen Gavin Newsom take a crack at this. We've seen a lot of folks try to come up with an answer that will satisfy both people who want rights and inclusivity, but also are concerned about what happens to young women who are playing sports. I didn't hear exactly an answer from the former Congresswoman tonight. Did you hear an answer?
I heard the answer that she's given over and over and over again. It may not be to y'all's satisfaction, but what she said is this is a local issue. This is a local school board issue. These are local community issues that they will work out. She was very clear when she asked, do you want a man in the bathroom with your daughter? She has three girls. Of course not. She clearly said, I don't want a man in the bathroom. That's the ad they've been running. Abigail Spanberger wants. No, she literally said she does not want men dressing in women's bathrooms. This is not hard. I have a 16-year-old daughter. Ain't no man coming up in the bathroom with my daughter, and I think that's very clear.
Okay, I lied. Actually, the last question is, how many seats are you guys going to pick up in the House of Delegates? It's been a real tipsy in Virginia. What's your number?
I'm going to be conservative tonight, 55.
Okay, there you
Conservative at 55. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Appreciate you. Be good. Be good. Be good. All right. He moved fast. He talked fast, Julia. I had to get in there while I could.
All good. No, but I mean, look, that's so interesting because, you know, the speaker actually, days after the Jay Jones texts were released, he was actually campaigning for the candidate challenging the delegate who Jay Jones sent those texts to. And during that campaign stop, he talked about how those texts were a distraction. Now, the speaker has denounced those texts, but he's gotten a lot of flack for his response.
Okay. Julia, this has been a tremendous fun being down here. I love it down here. I love hanging out. We have a great crew, and we really appreciate everybody at home hanging out with us. If you are a big enough political nerd to watch this, you should watch everything that we're offering here on the Hill. But for Julia Manchester and myself here in Norfolk, we thank you for your time. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and we'll see you next time.